The year was 1999, and what a year this was for gaming. Konami released the first ever Silent Hill, Capcom released Resident Evil 3, Squaresoft released Final Fantasy VIII, and if they weren't big enough bombshells, Sega unleashed its newest console, the Dreamcast, to the US and Europe. Amongst all of these gaming heavyweights though lied a plucky Gecko. He had done it twice already, once in 2D and then again in 3D. All that was left now was one final game, and it would go on to be the biggest, most ambitious game of the series. This is the big breakdown of GEX 3 Deep Cover Gecko. After the success of GEX Enter the Gecko, Crystal Dynamics wanted to make a bigger, more story-focused game. They wanted GEX to have a bigger personality, and they wanted to push the hardware limitations of both the PlayStation and the N64. This was a huge success. With more levels to play, multiple hub areas, and a girlfriend to save, which GEX talks to frequently between missions, there was always something new and exciting for the player to explore. The game was published by Eidos Interactive on the PlayStation and Crave Entertainment on the N64. Both versions had a couple of huge differences from one another, which we'll explore a bit later on. But now, what's this game all about? It begins with a cutscene of GEX watching TV. Suddenly, a breaking news report interrupts, stating that Agent Extra has gone missing. Agent Extra interrupts the news report with a video call to GEX and tells him that she is trapped in the media dimension and needs help. She then explains that Rez is back and he has kidnapped her to get to GEX. GEX makes an innuendo to Agent Extra, transfers her to his wristwatch, then teleports to Mission Control ready to go and save her. Now hold on a minute. Media dimension? Rez? What's all this? The media dimension is the world inside a television set. Think of it as a place where programs and movies come to life. Rez, who is GEX's arch nemesis, is an evil cyborg who is hell-bent on taking control of the media dimension. Using his power, he wants to endure the continuous running of bad TV shows and Z-grade movies. He has an army of TV characters from different worlds at his disposal, and they will attack GEX with every opportunity that they get. Anyway, after GEX is teleported to Mission Control, he brushes up with a spot of training, which is really a tutorial for the player, then heads over to the Holiday Broadcasting channel. Before entering the level, the player will notice that there are 3 missions to choose from. Completing a mission earns GEX a remote, and really, collecting the remotes is the main aim of this game. Each level requires a certain number of remotes to be collected before GEX can access it. There's a total of 4 remotes that can be collected per level. These are obtained when completing the 3 level missions, and a secret remote which unlocks when the player collects all 100 of the level's fly coins. Once the player completes a mission and earns a remote, it will need to be collected from a television, which will send GEX back to the hub. This means that the player will need to start the level again to earn the next remote. Also worth mentioning, GEX isn't required to earn all 50 remotes in the game. 30 is enough to unlock all of the levels. Holiday Broadcasting Totally Scrooged is a Christmas themed channel. To earn the remotes here, GEX must create 5 ice sculptures by whipping these blocks of ice into shape. Ride a snowboard down the hill and whack these snowboarding elves until they disappear, and defeat the evil Santa who launches presents at GEX which can be tail whipped straight back at him. GEX can also unlock an early ancestor of his called Rex by thawing him out by the fire. Rex can be used to play secret missions in the game, but we'll get more into that a bit later on. Next, GEX will play in the mansion of Mystery TV, Clueless in Seattle. This level requires 3 remotes to unlock and has a mystery horror theme to it. To start with, let's talk about the horror theme. GEX will need to break the 3 blood coolers in the mansion's foyer to earn a remote. He does this by turning into GEX, colliding to the coolers and smashing them. Now that being said, the real horror in this level isn't Gex or blood callers, it's the enemies and how the player is required to interact with them. Safari Sam, Billiard Bear, Lawn Furniture Fiend, these are all enemies that players must survive in this level. They may not look too scary by today's standards, but these guys certainly did creep out many kids in the 90s and early noughties. This is made more relevant because one remote requires the player to guide Gex through a garden maze full of Billiard Bears and Safari Sams. The last remote is where the mystery aspect comes in. It requires Gex to use his microscope to find the 3 minigames, shrink down and then beat them. The first minigame is on a mounted bear head where Gex has to destroy 10 fleas. The second minigame is inside a sink where Gex must pop 5 bubbles before the timer runs out. Then the last minigame is on a pool table where Gex must destroy 7 pool balls. Once Gex has acquired 5 remotes, he will unlock the red boss key. This opens a vault door, allowing him to leave mission control and enter a new hub area called Lake Flaccid. Lake Flaccid is home to 4 channels plus the first boss encounter. The first channel Gex visits is called Tut TV, Holy Moses, which is set in an ancient Egyptian temple and, like Lake Flaccid, requires 5 remotes to enter. Before being able to complete any mission in the level, this Anubis must be defeated so that this bridge can be unlocked and used to enter the main part of the level. Sticking with the Anubis, there are 2 more to defeat in this level. They all guard an item called a Lost Ark, which contains a trapped spirit inside. Defeating one Anubis frees 1 trapped spirit, and once Gex has defeated all 3 Anubis, he earns a remote. There are 3 staffs of Ra to collect. These can be unlocked by defeating these mummies. Once a mummy is defeated, the staff will unlock in this room, and once all 3 have been unlocked, Gex will earn another remote. One notable enemy in this area is the giant spider. Gex will need to eat a red fly, which will allow him to temporarily shoot fireballs at it and eventually destroy it. The last remote in the temple requires Gex to find the camel and ride it across the quicksand. Once he makes it to the other side, he will need to climb the wall whilst dodging fire traps and jumping past obstacles. When he reaches the top, the remote can be obtained. Once Gex has obtained 7 remotes, he'll be able to fight in the trenches of the army level, War as Heck. The first mission requires Gex to use machine gun turrets to shoot down searchlights and whack 5 tents. The turrets are scattered around the level facing the nearest searchlights. If Gex walks into the searchlights, an alarm will sound and he will be shot at by enemies known as searchlight snipers. The machine gun turrets can also be used to shoot Sergeant Sams and hand grenaders. Gex will be required to shoot many of these enemies if the player wishes to obtain the remote for surviving the maze and stealing the plans. In fact, one way or another, Gex will need to destroy all of the enemies in this area plus the searchlights if he wants to get into the command centre where the secret plans are hidden. The third remote can be earned by finding the 5 secret bug crates hidden in the built up part of this level. Gex uses a tank to blow down the building walls and then explores the innards to see if he can find the secret bug crates, one at a time. Once he has earned 9 remotes, Gex will mosey on over to the western station, the Organ Trail. This is a spaghetti western themed channel and Gex will need to rely on his trusty steed, well, donkey, to get him around most of the level. The first remote is earned when Gex uses his donkey to get him to the world's largest mound of poop. The donkey also helps Gex get to the top of a mountain where a less stinky remote can be obtained. There are many strange enemies along the way. Dusty cowboys who shoot pistols and headless cowboys who throw their heads at Gex are 2 that particularly stand out. The final remote is earned when Gex finds 5 playing cards scattered around the level. The last one is located on these tracks and can be easily overlooked if the player is still getting used to the level. The last level from Lake Flaccid is the Buccaneer program, Cut Cheese Island, and Gex will need 11 remotes to board this ship. The level begins with Gex mounting a cannon and shooting cannonballs at the skull's eyes. Once both eyes have been blasted, the mouth opens and Gex can walk through, entering the next part of the level. On this big pirate ship, Gex will need to survive the Wall of Death, a series of giant spiked walls that move towards him. He can jump down the pits along the way to avoid being spiked and sent back to the start. Next to the TV where Gex obtains that remote, there's a door that leads to the next area, which is where the other 2 remotes are obtained. Yep, the player will indeed need to survive the wall 3 times if they wish to obtain all 3 mission remotes, as well as battling against a number of skeletal Sams along the way. After climbing the mast, Gex will zip on down and obtain another remote. The final remote can be earned from sinking 4 pirate ships. This is done by mounting a cannon in 4 different areas, then blasting cannonballs at the ships until they sink. Once the player has collected 13 remotes, they can go on to GEX Wrestling Invasion of the Body Slammers on the ropes and fight the first boss, Rock Hard. Rock Hard can be hit when he stops to flex his muscles. This is given away by the level hint, which reads, muscle flexing can be hazardous to one's health. Once Rock Hard has been defeated, Gex will be rewarded with the green boss key. This opens up another vault in mission control, making the next hub area, Slappy Valley, available to explore. Slappy Valley is home to 3 levels, the first of which is called the Mythology Network. Weirdly, the level played on PlayStation is completely different to the level played on the N64. It's not known for sure, but most fans speculate that this is because the N64 was targeted towards a younger audience, meaning the level made for the PlayStation could have been a bit too difficult for them to get past. Both versions are themed around Rome and ancient Greece, however, the PS version is set high up in the clouds where falling is a very real hazard, and the N64 version is set in the underworld, or Hades. To get his 3 remotes in the PlayStation version, Gex must break the arms off of 5 statues, collect 3 golden apples, and find the TV at the end of the rainbow. In the N64 version, Gex needs to break 5 of these urns, survive the ogre's cave, and use his tongue to lick his way to the top of the obstacle course. In both versions, Gex can temporarily turn into Hercugex. This allows him to destroy a giant pillar, or move them to solve puzzles and get to hard to reach areas. In the PS version, Gex can eat a blue fly, which allows him to freeze a Trojan skeleton and jump on it to reach a higher platform, whereas on the N64 version, Gex can use his tongue to swing between platforms instead. After Gex has obtained 16 remotes, he can visit Fairy Tales TV, Red Riding in the Hood, Beanstalker. This is a vertical level with a huge beanstalk in the centre, and Gex will need to climb it to earn the level's 3 remotes. The first and trickiest remote can be earned when Gex reaches the top of the beanstalk. Luckily though, the giant doesn't seem to be at home when he gets there. The beanstalk requires a lot of patience and very careful platforming when climbing. If you're familiar with the game Only Up, this game will give the player a similar sense of anxiety when climbing, and a similar sense of frustration when Gex falls. If he does fall though, Gex can use his cloak to glide to safety. Speaking of gliding, Gex must glide to the 3 little pigs' houses, which are all located around the beanstalk. Each house has the big bad wolf hanging around outside, although defeating him is optional. There are 3 candlesticks scattered around the beanstalk. If Gex jumps over all 3, he will unlock the final remote from the TV at the bottom. Once Gex has earned 19 remotes, he can play in the anime channel when sushi goes bad. The first remote requires Gex to demolish the 3 proto-culture tubes, and it's fair to say that the area therein is heavily guarded. Baton bots, QQ droids and Sailor Toon girls are all enemies Gex will need to destroy plenty of if he wishes to complete the mission and obtain the remote. The next remote can be earned by deactivating the Planet Destroyer. To reach it, Gex must pass a series of gauntlets and elevators until he reaches the top of the level where it's located. He can then destroy it and grab his remote. The final mission requires Gex to find and destroy the 5 rogue mechs. These mechs are QQ droids and located in a large room with a fan in the centre. Gex defeats the first 3 mechs, which causes the glass to smash, revealing a pool of water. He then dives in and presses the switch, which gives the fan a boost of power. This allows Gex to reach the last 2 QQ droids, defeat them and win the remote. Next up, after collecting 22 remotes, is boss number 2, the Lizard of Oz, lions, tigers and GEX. The brain will shoot fireballs which homes in on GEX. Also, Reslings will randomly spawn in and chase GEX around the stage. To defeat the brain, GEX must mount the golden cannons which appear and disappear whilst trying not to take damage from the Reslings. Once the brain is defeated, the blue boss key is unlocked, which opens up the last vault to the final hub area, Funky Town. Funky Town is home to the final 2 levels and the big showdown with Rez. It has a dressing room which allows GEX to temporarily transform into a superhero and collect hard to reach collectibles scattered around the hub. The first stop here is Gangster TV, My Free Goons, and it requires 22 remotes to enter. We see the return of the red TV flyer which allows GEX to shoot fireballs. This will come in handy if he wants to earn the first remote, which requires him to burn 5 bundles of funny money. The red TV flyer can also be used to defeat goons and break locks. In fact, Gex's cousin, who is named Cuz, is being held prisoner on this level and GEX must shoot a fireball at the lock to free him. Doing so earns GEX a remote, plus Cuz is now a playable character in the secret levels. The final remote requires GEX to destroy 5 root beer barrels scattered around the level. Along the way, the player will come across a few fixed Tommy guns which GEX can mount and shoot multiple enemies with. Moving on to the last level before the final boss fight, GEX, assuming he has 26 remotes, can enter Superhero Show, Super Zeros. The player will find these dressing rooms placed around the level which allow GEX to temporarily transform into a superhero with a special power. This one is called Atomic GEX and it gives him super strength which can be used to remove large objects in the way. Essential if the player wants to obtain the remote for getting 3 stray cats. The other superhero outfit is called Poultry Person, and this allows GEX to glide from building to building so he can find and defeat the 5 escaped convicts, which of course earns another remote. One thing worth mentioning in this level is that most of the walls are climbable. Traversing such walls and defeating Beanie Boys amongst other enemies along the way will lead GEX to the Mad Bomber. Defeating him will earn the final remote of the level. The finale is played on Channel Z, Res Raker, and requires 30 remotes to enter. GEX will start the level by exiting the spaceship, which is known as the Saucy Susan, and platform across various satellites to the space station. There are 3 generators on the wings of the space station that need to be disabled. Once that's done, GEX will continue to the airlock and begin the final showdown with Rez. When the fight begins, the player will notice a green slime fly TV next to GEX. This is needed to shoot slime or acid at Rez whilst avoiding his rockets. Once Rez has taken a hit, GEX will need to be in the centre circle because the platform where the TV fly was will fall. Rez will take swipes at GEX and the player will need to perform different movements to avoid him. Rinse and repeat 5 times, then Rez is defeated. Now, depending on what console the game is played on, the end cutscene will be different. On the PlayStation, GEX and Agent Extra are in a hotel room together. Alfred the Tortoise video calls GEX to tell him that there's an emergency and the world needs him, but GEX cuts him off because he's much more interested in celebrating with Agent Extra. The screen goes black and some noises can be heard from Agent Extra, so I bet you could have a good guess at what they're getting up to. On the N64 version, GEX and Agent Extra aren't actually present for the final cutscene. Instead, it's Alfred and he's relaxing on GEX's island. He explains that he purchased tickets for GEX and Extra to go on a relaxing cruise. He then reveals that GEX couldn't have saved Extra without his help, which is a fair point really, considering Alfred has been on hand to offer tips and hints throughout the whole game. Now, why were these endings so different? Well, it goes back to the N64 being marketed towards a younger audience again. Nintendo didn't think the end scene made for the PlayStation, amongst all of GEX's sexual innuendos and a few other things, were entirely appropriate, so they either changed them or cut them out completely. You may have noticed when watching the story that GEX's health started off looking like this, then ended up looking like this. Throughout the game there are many collectibles, one of which are paw coins, and collecting 25 of these rewards Gex with an extra health point. There are 10 to collect in each level and in each hub area, making a total of 150. However, Gex only needs to collect 100 to reach his maximum health. If Gex loses a health point, he can eat a green fly to restore it. Purple flies on the other hand will give Gex an extra life. Golden flies, also known as fly coins, are available to collect all around the game. Each level and hub area, excluding mission control, has 100 to collect. Collecting 50 coins rewards Gex with an extra life, whilst collecting all 100 in an area rewards Gex with a secret remote. Bonus bonanzas and secret levels are both optional side missions that the player can pursue. There are 5 bonus bonanzas in the game and they're unlocked using bonus coins which are collected in regular levels. The bonus bonanzas themselves vary in theme, but one thing they all have in common is that the player is always required to complete the challenge on a timer. In Marsupial Madness, the player uses Paunch the kangaroo to ring 10 bells. In Gextreme Sports, the player needs to whack 5 elves with the snowboard. In War and Pieces, Gex will drive the tank and defeat 10 res tanks. In True Grits, Gex will ride his trusty steed El Nino and break 10 chicken crates. And finally, in What a Croc, Gex will ride a crocodile named Scales and eat 10 rubber ducks. Completing these challenges unlocks cheat codes which can be used in the Gex Vault. The Gex Vault is available once the player has collected all 4 vault keys from each of the 4 secret levels. To earn a key, the player must collect all 50 fly coins before the timer runs out. This is true on every level except Peg Leg Polka, in which the player must move barrels instead to progress. If the player has managed to save Rex or Cuz, these guys can be played instead of Gex on any of these levels. The shield key is earned when completing Dial A for Arson on the PlayStation, Peg Leg Polka on the N64. The skull key is earned when completing Brave Heartless on the PlayStation or Temple of Gloom on the N64. The star key is earned when completing the Abysmal, which is on both consoles, and the radioactive key is earned when completing Cheesy Rider, which is also on both consoles. Well, I think that just about covers everything. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and please subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. We've got many more games and TV shows to break down. Also, if you want to learn more about the Gex series, I have left a link in the description to the fandom wiki. It's jam-packed with a ton of awesome lore, so definitely worth a look if you're interested. Thanks again, hopefully see you on the next video.